So the introduction is pretty straightforward. The weather is sunny because it's an outdoor story. It's a Saturday morning because I want to be walking towards the place. I'm on my way, or James is on his way to the enrichment classes at Heartland Mall, right? And he's walking along a pedestrian walkway. Okay, so that's my introduction. Now I need to start to introduce the problem, right? So over here, in the distance, James saw that the pedestrian crossing light was blinking rapidly. It was about to turn red. Okay, so do y'all know what are pedestrian lights? Y'all know that, right? That's the crossing sign with the green man and the red man, right? But of course, I don't say green man, red man. I say the pedestrian crossing light. So the pedestrian crossing light was blinking rapidly. It was about to turn red. Okay, so this is my end of first paragraph. Why? Because I'm going to introduce my problem in the second paragraph. Remember, your first paragraph is actually the introduction. Your second paragraph is actually the introduction to the problem, right? So introduction, problem or rising action, and then I will have my conclusion in my last paragraph. Okay, so rising action, falling action, and then conclusion is how I structure my story. Okay, so now second paragraph. Glancing at his watch. So this is my problem. James realized that he was running extremely late. Okay, so this is going to be the reason why James gets into an accident, because he is late, right? So he was running extremely late. Notice my tenses are all in the past tense, right? It was a sunny Saturday. James was on his way. The pedestrian walkway was crowded, right? James saw the pedestrian crossing light. It was about to turn red. Everything is in past tense. Never use present tense when you are writing a narrative. Okay, so it must all be in the past tense. Glancing at his watch, so you can begin with a verb in the ing form. Glancing at his watch, James realized that he was running extremely late, right? So then, clutching his bag tightly, because James was holding his bag full of his enrichment materials, right? James broke into a sprint, trying to beat the red light, right? Okay, so he wants to get to the pedestrian crossing before it turns red, right? So he's trying to beat the light, right? He was running, sprinting to cross the pedestrian crossing before it turned red. So now here is my climax, right? The unfortunate incident. So remember, boys and girls, when you're writing a story, you must get to the part where it's most exciting and stay there. Don't summarize everything in one line. He was knocked down by a car, full stop, right? That would not be a good development of your content. Always pause at the climax to develop by giving more details and descriptions, which I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so how do I develop this accident to make it even more vivid, more interesting, and more well developed? Okay, so let's see. Okay, so as he was crossing the road, right? Okay, so as James was dashing across, all right, so maybe I want to change to dashing across, because I use the word sprint, I use the word dash. I'm using different words to describe his speed, right? He's running really quickly. As James was dashing across the road, right, he suddenly heard, okay, so again, I'm using my senses. Now I'm describing what I see. Now I'm describing what I hear. A screeching sound of tires on the road. Okay, so obviously a car is trying to stop before it hits James, right? So the screeching sound of tires on the road. In a flash, James felt a sharp pain and fell to the ground, moaning in agony. All right. So I haven't told the reader what's happened yet, but I'm focusing on James' reaction. Notice I didn't just say he got knocked down by a car, right? I didn't immediately say that. Don't jump to the conclusion. Always work your way through the climax slowly. So what happened? He dashed across the road. Then he heard the sound of screeching tires. Then he felt a sharp pain, right? And then he fell to the ground, moaning in agony. So he fell to the ground, moaning in agony, right? Now I can tell you what actually happened to James, right? I can go back and I can explain, right? A shiny red, okay, Toyota, okay, maybe I'll just put in the brand of the car. And again, you can be more specific, right? You can use different brands, right? If you can spell it, you can use it. So a shiny red Toyota sedan, right? A sedan is a car with 4 doors, right? Had tried to brake, but hit James instead. Okay? So we describe the car that hit James. It's very important, right? Because this is one of the more important parts of your story. What was the appearance of the car that hit James? Don't be in a hurry to just focus on the fact that James was hit by a car. Describe the car, right? And then describe the person who was driving the car, right? So an elderly gentleman dressed in a suit jumped out from the car and immediately ran over to examine James. Okay? Now, I can go to my next paragraph, right? Remember, when you introduce the problem must get, yes, that's right, the problem must get worse, right? I must make the problem even worse than it is. So in this case, James is involved in an accident. Now, the thing which makes it worse is the injury that James would sustain as he is lying on the road. So now I can describe the injuries, right, that James sustains, okay? James was moaning in pain because he could not move his right leg, okay? It felt paralyzed and blood was streaming from a wide gash across his thigh, okay? So I'm describing the injury, right? I'm giving you detail, right? So there's blood streaming from a gash or a cut on his thigh. He can't move his leg, right? Because he's been hit by the car on his right leg, okay? Now, in this case, the motorist, the driver, now has to make a decision on what to do, right? So I will go into details about how the driver summons the police and the ambulance, which is my picture, right? Because my ambulance must arrive on the scene in order for my writing assignment to be complete. It's an unfortunate incident, it's an accident, and then the ambulance, right? The picture. So always consider the theme and the picture as you are writing, so you will not miss out on the important parts, okay? You must have both the picture as well as the keywords in order for your writing to qualify as having met the writing task, okay? So now let me move on. The panicking, right? Because of course, if the driver knocks a person down, he'll be panicking, right? The panicking driver quickly summoned the ambulance and the police on his mobile phone while trying to stop James's bleeding with his handkerchief. Okay, so maybe he uses his handkerchief to try to press on the wound to stop the wound from bleeding, right? So he's trying to help, and then he summons the ambulance and the police, right? In moments, right? So use expressions like in moments, or in a flash, or within a minute, or within a few minutes, right? The wailing sirens of the approaching ambulance fill the air. Okay, so it's the sound of the ambulance. Now I go to my last paragraph and I can conclude my story, right? And remember, in the conclusion, you must always have a reflection and a lesson learned, right? All stories that have problems must have lessons. Every time you have a problem that your character faces, your character must learn a lesson. JV, are you paying attention? JV, are you paying attention? I can see you and you don't look like you're paying attention. Please pay attention. Okay, now, are you all good so far? Are you all following Mr. Pang? Right? I'm trying to go a little bit faster because I don't want to hold you back too long. You can always replay this, but I'm building the story for you paragraph by paragraph, right? So the first paragraph was an introduction. It introduced the character, the setting, and the purpose for why the character is there. The second paragraph is the problem, right? It introduces what happens to the character that's bad. And then the third paragraph is the climax or the rising action where the problem gets even worse before it gets better. So in this case, James is knocked down and then his injury is really bad, right? His very, very serious injury. And now in the last paragraph, the conclusion, I will end the story and then I will have James reflect on the lesson that he learned, right? So far, how many words have I written? About 200 words, okay? So this is a bit on the long side. You don't need to write it that long, but generally speaking, a good guideline is between 150 to 200 words for your composition, okay? So let me bring this composition to an end with a conclusion. Then I'll give you some concluding thoughts about some common mistakes you all make, okay? So last paragraph, right? So now the ambulance has arrived, right, on the scene. The people who are in the ambulance are called paramedics, right? So paramedics rushed out, okay, of the waiting ambulance with a stretcher, right? They carefully loaded James onto the stretcher and transported him into the ambulance. That day, James learned an important lesson: to always observe his curb drill and to be careful whenever he crosses a road. Thankfully, he was discharged from the hospital after a day with only minor injuries. Okay, so I will end the story there. Okay, so notice in my conclusion, I end the story. What happens to James? He is brought away in the ambulance. What lesson did James learn? He learned about the importance of observing the curb drill and about watching out for traffic. And did he ultimately sustain any serious injuries? No, he didn't. Thankfully, he was discharged with only minor injuries. Now, a composition like this will comfortably garner you between 8 to 9 upon 10 for your content and between 8 to 9 upon 10 for your language, giving you a grand total of between 16 to 18 upon 20 for your total mark. Okay, now what is the problem with many of your writing, right? A lot of you, your content is not well developed. Where is the content part here? Okay, let me highlight it for you. Okay, so this part here is where often many of you are not able to develop. Okay, so this part here is the climax. Instead of saying that James ran across the road and he was knocked down by a car, Notice that I have expanded that one sentence into 2 long paragraphs, okay? First, why was he in a hurry? Because he was late. Then, as he broke into a run, a sprint, right? He was trying to beat the light. He heard the screeching sound of brakes and tires. He felt a sharp pain. He fell to the ground. And then we say what happened to him, right? A car had knocked into him. What kind of a car? It was a shiny red Toyota sedan. Okay, who was driving the car? An elderly gentleman dressed in a suit. And what did he do? He jumped out of the car and he ran over to examine James to check if he was okay, right? And James, how was James? James was moaning in pain. He couldn't move his right leg. It was paralyzed. Blood was streaming out of a gash across his thigh, right? So build your story step by step. Don't summarize everything into one sentence and then your story is too short and it's not well developed. If you just write one line, your content cannot go beyond 10 to 11 upon 20. At the very most, you will pass, okay? So see the difference between a 10, 11 and between an 8 to 9 and a 5 to 6, right? Big difference, right? You need to expand your center part of your story. Imagine a big fat lamp, right? The middle part of the lamp must be the fattest, right? The top and the bottom of it is the skinniest. So your introduction, right, over here, I will highlight it in a different color, right? Your introduction and your conclusion doesn't need to be that long. Notice Mr. Pang's introduction and conclusion is only about 1 paragraph, whereas my climax and my rising action, my golden triangle, is 2 long paragraphs. Okay, very, very different in length. Don't spend too much time in the introduction. Don't spend too much time in the conclusion. Spend most of your time developing the middle part of the story. And remember, there must be the picture and there must be the keywords here. In this case, the keyword unfortunate incident and the picture an ambulance. I chose the picture of the ambulance. Always choose one picture and always link that picture to the theme and the topic, which is an unfortunate incident. For your test, it will be a different topic. It will be a different set of pictures, but you must use at least one of the pictures. Is everybody clear? Do you all understand what Mr. Pang is saying? Kaiji, are you following? Yes? Okay, good. All right. So it's very important that you follow these main points, okay? I'm going to send this over to all of you and I will make this recording available. Mr. Pang is trying to speed up, so I'm talking very quickly today and I'm not taking any questions because I'm just trying to save the time for our future Zoom sessions, okay? I will give you a few more bite-sized Zoom sessions leading up to Friday, right? Hopefully we can catch each other during the National Day holidays, right? If not, you can always watch the recordings. But at this point in time, nothing I've said is new. We've covered this many times in class as well as over other Zoom sessions. Do you have any questions before I dismiss all of you? No? Okay, so all good. Right, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you on Monday. All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.